one other question that I had as well that I think people still really don't get a grasp for is how open the landscape is for dampers, right? Because in our world, and in Formula One, you're building everything from the ground up. Obviously, for us, everyone thinks it's a spec series. Now, again, there's a lot of it that's spec for sure. Like a lot of us have the same aero parts. We all have access to that. But I think people still don't know anything about what the dampers actually do, what they're able to do, and where they've come, like, let's say, in the last 4 or 5 years. Because I've seen them, when we just discovered inertia in the dampers, like, for the first time, like, that was new over the last couple of years. And then, maybe not new, but it was something that was really pushed hard on in the damper program. But can you kind of explain, just to give people an idea of, like, hey, this is the advantage of having a damper that is working efficiently, and maybe what's the opposite?
It's funny because I'm
not going to get your damper secrets. I know that. I'm not trying to get it. I'm trying to talk normal science. I would literally give up my several toes and pinky fingers maybe to have a Penske damper. But hey, let's just talk about basics.
Well, that's what I mean. I've been on both sides of it. I've been a new team coming into the series, buying dampers off the shelf and having a great time trying to figure out why we suck. And then I've been on the other side where it's put these on the car and don't take them off because they're the best thing since sliced bread. So they make a massive difference. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have a lot of very smart people here at Team Penske who are a lot smarter than me in that area and able to provide information, resource, and quality stuff for us to use, where we trust those guys and what they find for us, whether it's rig tests or simulation or anything else, to really fine-tune our package for every track we go to. It's not they might look the same, but on the inside, we're taking something different everywhere we go. We're optimizing
exactly, and people don't realize that as well. The dampers, you're not just running the same thing for every track. It's a completely fine-tuned package, damper curve, and everything, right?
Right, and that's a step further when you go oval racing, because they're different at every track, and every corner themselves is completely different what you're doing. Yes. So it's there's a lot of speed to unlock in getting that package right, and it's funny how people travel in between teams, engineers come and go, drivers come and go, and the first thing anyone ever asks is, "What's your damper package look like? What you got any curves? You got any information that can help us in our direction?" And everywhere I've ever been to, you try to run someone else's philosophy on your car, and it doesn't work, regardless. Yeah. So that just shows that that damper package is so optimized around whatever fundamental setup each team is using that it's difficult just to pull a damper off one car and throw it on the other and have success.
Yeah, and it's why, like, for example, if for some reason this often happens, right? You can like, oh, we got to look at the Ganassi setup sheet. Well, if you try to just apply that to let's say an ECR car, for example, or any car that I've driven, like it doesn't matter what car it is, that won't just work, because the way you're generating grip through the damper, right, is completely different. Is that accurate in saying that?
Yeah, 100%. And even here, we went to a test at Iowa my first year, and I thought we had a pretty successful package at Iowa when you drove at Carlin, and it was fundamentally different. Fundamentally different to the Penske package, and we tried it at a test, and it was garbage without the dampers we run here. So it's like, okay, let's reset and go back. So
a pole-winning set, but isn't that so funny, right? A pole-winning setup, like, we were pretty freaking quick. I'm not gonna lie, and we probably should have been on the podium in race 2, but we still regret that. But that's fascinating that you could take that setup to Team Penske and it doesn't work because that's just how the sport is. That's how difficult it is, right?
100%.
And so that's what I find fascinating. So I just want to even go one step deeper. So tell people what, like, this is. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, because again, this is stuff that folks might not know. So when you say, okay, you can mess with the internals of the damper, but essentially the damper is what creates grip. Like it's a crucial piece of the suspension. Can you explain what goes in there? Maybe how many adjustments you can make, because there's compression, there's rebound, there's different changes that you can make to the damper once it's on there.
Yeah, and now they've become so complex because they've got the inerter inside of it. Most people run inerters in all four corners just the way the rules are, but they fundamentally bump rebound or compression. You got high speed, low speed. Now, on top of that, some people might have some sort of blow-off system in there to help it over curbs and ride the curbs. And, all these are adjustable, and all you're really doing is fine-tuning how much tire compact patch you've got on the road. At the end of the day, the tire needs to be on the road. That's what's connecting the car to the road or the surface, and that's what's generating the grip. So you're trying to control whether it's low frequency or high frequency vibration on the road or bumps or whatever it is to try get the tire to grip the track as much as possible.
So let's talk just a little bit about the aerodynamic side right now, because at Indy, everyone talks about, what trim level are you at? And sometimes people are like, well, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? And Nashville, I tried to explain to people like, we had a pretty unique package where there was nothing on the floor and, just basically trying to look for downforce on the top side of the car. And so can you explain, let's just, for example, because the Indy 500 is what people know the most, give people kind of a few ideas of what the most downforce we can run, and then if you're looking to be super trim in qualifying, what you kind of have to take off the pieces and how far you can go on the rear wing. Because again, it sounds smarter probably coming from you than me, and it doesn't give away setup. It's just like the rules of the series.
Well, it's funny because, you look at a qualifying car and a race car at the 500, and to most people they look exactly the same and you can't tell, right? It's very difficult to tell unless you've got a clean eye. But the qualifying car, you're trying to run the least amount of downforce possible to do 4 laps flat out without lifting. And based on whatever your mechanical package is, that includes the dampers, whether you've got, a hot good set or you're struggling in that department, but you're going to trim to whatever level you can to do just that, be flat for 4 laps. And it's very easy to be flat for the first one, but by the time you get the 4th one, especially if it's a hot, windy day, you're hanging on. So you're trying to factor that in when you choose your trim level. And ultimately what happens if, you don't quite have the inherent speed in your car, which we definitely fought for a few years there, is you find yourself trying to trim too much to go faster and you go slower because the car just doesn't get the road.
Yeah, which is possible. It's possible to be like, why did we go faster? Well, now you're too trim and you're just sliding around too much. That's right?
Correct. So it's a very fine line between, having enough downforce to have enough grip to get through the corner without sliding, and then taking too much and sliding and actually scrubbing too much speed in the corners. When you get into the race, you're talking a big total difference in downforce, and you see that in a lap speed. We run the low boost there, and everyone...
Give people a number, though, because I know there's a number like overall race downforce, like max downforce is like something. I forget what the number is, but essentially it's like 2,600 pounds. There's some level of downforce that you can get to, and then qualifying it's like 1,000 pounds less or something like that. Is that correct?
So it's not quite dramatic, but you're talking somewhere between 2,000 and 2,800 basically.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then so what we can take off from the downforce side though is everything from the floor, right? And then you can also now we trim the car by ride heights as well. We find that I explained how the weight jacker worked and the fast jacker, right? And what people are doing with the rear of the car now. Is that kind of impressive to see where everyone's finding speed now?
We've gotten to the point where everyone's had this car too long now, where it takes all these little things to get the last little bit of speed out of it. It comes back to the detail comment earlier, is everyone's finding these fine details now to get the last little bit of speed out of the car.
And but I mean, all that matters. So like, I guess when you say, hey, okay, Joseph, we're going to need, or me, for example, like we're going to need to go out there. We want to go a little bit faster. You could easily just take downforce off the wings, right? But there's more speed by taking the stuff off the floor. Like that makes the car way less draggy. So is that something this is all stuff as well that as teams, every team has a simulation for what it might do. So kind of tell people what you guys look at from the simulation side and say, hey, this is what we think it's going to do. And now it's probably all quite close. Is that correct when it happens in real life?
Yeah, it's we have our aero guys, whether they're doing CFD or they're in the wind tunnel with a car learning and mapping, and we take that information to our simulator guys, and they'll run us a nice L over D, a lift over drag sort of progression of here's the total amount of downforce, and if you're going to be the most efficient as you can for drag, you're going to work down that line, that plot, and that's as efficient as you can trim. And you sort of take that and go, okay, well, this one makes the most amount of sense for these conditions. It might be a hot day, it might be a cold day, so you're factoring that in, and you're just kind of working down that progression. So whether that's rear wing angle is the obvious one, or a rear wing wicker. You see wickers in the race at the Speedway now because they're allowed. That's a real easy one for people to see. But at the same time, if you're putting rear downforce on, you need to put front downforce on to balance the car, otherwise it won't turn. So that's when you see the extensions on the front wing, wickers on the extensions, all those little things to try balance the car. But you do all that and it goes slower in a straight line. So again, it's a real fine line of, you can have a car that races really well in traffic and can get to the front, but is it fast enough when you're at the front to stay out front? And that's the battle everyone fights.